Hi, today we are back talking about attributes. These attributes describe two-dimensional shapes. Our two-dimensional shape category of the day is four-sided figures. And four-sided figures are called quadrilaterals, and many of you know about quads because that's the nickname for those four-wheel little vehicles that people drive in the woods. And quad means four. So now we know that quadrilaterals are always going to have four sides and four angles. And the deal with the quadrilaterals is they add up to 360 degrees. Now, the thing about quadrilaterals is they're sort of all interlinked in a way that triangles aren't as much. So we're going to start with this big family of quadrilaterals that are called parallelograms. And a parallelogram has opposite sides are parallel. And parallel means those opposite sides will always be equidistant apart, often to infinity, and they will never meet. So they are, the top and the bottom are parallel, and the side are parallel. Now let's talk about markings for a second. When you are talking about parallel lines, to make parallel, they do a little top of an arrow on there. And if there's one arrow top, then you find the other arrow top. Those are the two that are parallel to each other. But if you have more than one set of parallel lines, then you will get two parallel line markings on your second one. And this works also for the sides of the shape. So one line here tells you that this one is equal to this one, and two lines here tell you that a different equal set is going to be these two because they match. And it really doesn't matter. I could have said that the one lines went with the top and the bottom and the two lines went with the sides. It only matters that they match, okay? So a parallelogram has two pairs of parallel sides. And the opposite sides, so in this case the top and the bottom, and in this case the side and the side, are equal. And the other thing that is true is the opposite angles are equal. And in a parallelogram, I drew it over here too so that we would not have to spend too many markings on one picture. Opposite angles means the angles that are opposite of each other diagonally. And so these two are opposite angles, and then these two are also opposite angles. And oftentimes they make a marking of one curve, like we saw in the triangles. One curve tells you that the first two angles here are equal, and then to show that there's a different angle that has a set of equal angles, they do two, and then they do two. And it sounds complicated, but when you look at those pictures, you can figure it out. It's not really so bad. So one line means one set of equal lines, two lines, two set of equal lines, one curve, one set of equal angles, two curves, two sets of equal angles. And then the same with the parallel lines. One arrow, those ones are parallel. Two arrows, those ones are parallel. All right, now that we've gotten through that, there are different kinds of parallelograms. So they all live in the same family of parallelogram. A rectangle is a parallelogram because opposite sides are equal, opposite angles are equal. A rectangle has two parallel lines going across, two going up and down, right? Vertical, horizontal. And they meet in four right angles. So a rectangle has only right angles, right? And you know rectangles, you met them a long time ago. They're for your friends. And a type of rectangle is a square because a square has four right angles and parallel sides, and opposite sides are equal, and opposite angles. So sides, I forgot that word, and opposite angles are equal. Okay, so a square has all of that. So a square is still a parallelogram, and it's a kind of rectangle, but it's its own special kind of rectangle, a square. Now, if we go backwards a tiny bit, rectangles are one kind of parallelogram. A rhombus is another kind of parallelogram, and you met a rhombus early on. Rhombuses look like squares that someone sat on, and they just kind of smooched a little bit. So they have a wide angle and they have a narrow angle, and they do not have right angles. They are more like a diamond. So a rhombus is a kind of parallelogram, but it's not a rectangle because it doesn't have 90-degree angles. Okay? Does that make sense? So a rhombus is a kind of parallelogram, but not a kind of rectangle. But the thing about a rhombus that's similar to a square, which makes them kind of cousiny, is that a rhombus has 4 equal sides, just like a square does. And it's a parallelogram, just like a square is. And its opposite angles are equal. The only thing that's different between the rhombus and the square is that it doesn't have 90-degree angles. Okay, so these guys live in a family group. The rhombus is part of the parallelogram family, but not part of the rectangle family. And it has some similarities with the square. All right. This word is one that you probably will not hear very often. Usually when you find a 4-sided figure where all the sides are not parallel or equal, it's just called a quadrilateral. We don't usually use trapezium, but there is such thing as a trapezium. And a certain kind of trapezium is a kite. And you do know about kites, so I put this stuff on there just because. And a kite has 2 adjacent sides that are equal, right? So this side is equal to this side, and adjacent is like your neighbor, right? That's the one that is sitting right next to you. And then, so I'm going to put adjacent is your neighbor. And then also this set is equal, the other set is equal. So a kite, kind of a quadrilateral. It is a kind of quadrilateral. It's the kind that has some equal sides to each other, but not any equal angle. Well, I don't know, maybe this angle is equal. It probably is equal. So a couple of equal angles, but anyway, so kite. And you aren't going to see a kite today, so this is just introduction to kite. And then the other kind of shape that you may see today is a trapezoid. And a trapezoid has 2 parallel lines, right? One on top and one on the bottom usually. And then the other sides can be the same, but they don't have to be the same. So we are familiar with the trapezoid because it is a shape in the pattern blocks that you've been looking at since you were little. But a trapezoid can also, so long as it has parallel lines, it can also look more like that, like it could look chopped off, or it could look like that. It could even look like a wide one there, and then an even wider one there. I don't know. It can look lots of different ways. The main thing is just one set of parallel lines inside of it. Okay, so these are our shapes that we're dealing with and the ways that we describe them. Most of these things aren't new to you. It's just adding in that little part about describing them. And now we're going to look at a few problems that we could do with them. So today you're going to be using some online games to categorize parallelograms because we don't have any parallelogram stuff that's good in our math journal. It's complicated. So we're just going to practice here. This shape here is, it's got, as soon as you've got this one as a 90-degree angle, you can assume they're all 90-degree angles. And it's got parallel lines that match up. So this can be a rectangle. It could be a quadrilateral. And that might be it because it can't be a rhombus And it's not going to be a trapezoid because it's got those 90-degree angles. Now this shape here, it's got four sides that are the same and opposite angles are the same, they're equal. And so this one is going to be a rhombus. And then this final shape here, it just has one set of parallel lines, so it's going to be a trapezoid. And I want to end with this. Sometimes people try to trick you and they say, is this a rectangle or is this a square? And the thing that's tricky is a rectangle is the category. A square is a type of a rectangle. Type of rectangle. So the trick answer here is this is both a square and a rectangle because it fits into both definitions. And your exit slips for the next 2 days ask you to make decisions based on, it's just true and false, based on the markings or the attributes that are communicated in the shapes. So you guys are going to go off and do lots of practice problems and online in various ways, and then try out your exit slips and see how you feel about this. But remember, everything that has to do with attributes of two-dimensional shapes, it's stuff you mostly know. It's just thinking about, talking about it in really specific ways and recognizing those definitions in really specific ways. All right, good luck. Get out there and work on math.